Palaces are places where people of royalty are able to live. They're some of the most lavish and luxurious homes in the world, but there are some that are bigger and better than others, with hundreds upon hundreds of rooms and many acres of space. Join me for today's video as we take a look at 5 of the biggest palaces on Earth.
Number 5.
The history of the Schönbrunn Palace in Vienna, Austria runs all the way back to the 17th century and was the fabulous summer residence of the House of Habsburg, which was the ruling family at the time. These dukes, archdukes and emperors reigned for about 700 years, so it's safe to say that it was one hell of a palace during its heyday. But this palace is a classic example of the gorgeous Baroque style of architecture of the day. What really stands out here is the absolute perfect symmetry of the entire structure. Everything from the gardens to the grand ceiling murals mirrors each other perfectly, and when you're done checking out the sculptures and elaborate hedge mazes on the outside, make your way inside to gaze upon all of the literally priceless artworks hanging on the walls. Not to be outdone, Vienna's Schönbrunn Palace is made of 1,441 rooms, including their own Hall of Mirrors, which Mozart himself performed in all those years ago for the Empress Maria Theresa and Marie Antoinette when he was just a 6-year-old child prodigy. If those walls could talk.
Number 4.
Scotland is incredibly old, and so there are plenty of castles still standing that can provide us all with a glimpse into the country's past. But there is one that really does take the cake. Edinburgh Castle sits on the aptly named Castle Rock and overlooks the entire capital for which it's named. And while the castle's positioning may serve as an incredible backdrop for the folks below, it had a more strategic implementation when it was built. Everyone in the castle could see the enemy as they approached, while still remaining incredibly difficult to reach. Simply put, Edinburgh Castle has the high ground. The castle has a bit of a tumultuous history, and during both the First and Second Wars of Scottish independence, it changed hands back and forth between the Scottish and the English plenty of times. Nowadays though, the tensions have died down a bit, and Edinburgh Castle is one of the top tourist attractions that Scotland has to offer, with plenty of tours and events happening throughout the day. Even if you want to avoid the castle crowds, Edinburgh Castle is probably the most picturesque scene in the entire country, and simply enjoying it from afar may be just as magical.
Number 3.
Drottningholm Palace, Sweden is home to plenty of castles and palaces, all of which give viewers a tiny glimpse into what the country was like in a more sophisticated time. But none of them are able to truly capture the time period quite like this palace. This palace was built back in the 1600s and is one of the country's best preserved royal palaces and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But unlike some of the other palaces we've seen on this list today, Drottningholm Palace's history doesn't end hundreds of years ago, because it's still the permanent residence of the King and Queen of Sweden. This place is absolutely massive, and while there are guided tours going on almost every day here, the King and Queen are kept to the southern wing to maintain their privacy. But it's so big that they would hardly even know that the public is there. And to add to the mystique of this palace, the royal home is located on an island in Lake Millard and offers some sweeping views of the area that only money can buy. While the interiors here are certainly epic and fit for the setting of a period drama, the grounds of Drottningholm Palace are even more breathtaking, with its gorgeous Baroque gardens and a Chinese pavilion. And while much of the palace here has been renovated and updated to keep it going throughout the years, its theatre is still using all of the original stage machinery from 1776.
Number 2.
When we think of castles, it's easy for the mind to go straight to medieval England when the lords and ladies ruled supreme. But Spain has plenty of castles too. So if you ever get the chance to visit the country, why not take a day to check out Alhambra Castle? Alhambra is a sweeping palace and fortress in Andalusia, Spain. It was built in the 13th century by Nasrid Emir Muhammad bin al-Ammar of the Emirate of Granada, and what makes Alhambra so cool is that it was built right on top of the ruins of a former Roman fortification. It officially became the Royal Palace in the year 1333, and by the mid-1400s, Alhambra was the site of the royal court of Ferdinand and Isabella, and legend has it that Christopher Columbus was even given the green light for his famed expedition here. But on the outside, Alhambra is a solid example of the Moorish architecture that dominated the ancient Muslim dynasties in the region. There's plenty to do and see here, like the Court of the Myrtles, Hall of the Ambassadors, and Court of the Lions, and if you get here at the right time of year, it's surrounded by lush green gardens.
Number 1.
The final entry on our list does the impossible by putting all of the other palaces to shame. Located in Brunei, the Istana Royal Aman Palace is the official residence of the Sultan of Brunei and provides him with his much needed 2.1 million square feet of space. You may think that's a little much maybe. Well, Sultan and his family probably don't, and you wouldn't either if you got to live there. This palace has 1,788 rooms and 257 bathrooms, and a mosque that fits up to 1,500 people. Then there's the 200 polo pony stables, 5 swimming pools, and a 110 car garage. The palace's name translates to Palace of Faith Light, and was designed back in 1984 and cost almost $1.5 billion to build, and the value of the property has gone up since then. When you look at the palace's exterior, you'll notice the gold domes and vaulted roofs, which combine the local Malay and Islamic architectures to create the most extravagant home in the world. But don't worry, because the Sultan and his family aren't the only people here. The palace may serve as their private home, but it's also where foreign dignitaries stay when they come to visit. The Istanbul Ruleman Palace is also open to visitors 3 days a year, and at the end of Ramadan where guests are served food to break their fast. That's one guest list you better try your absolute best to get on.
Check out one of our other amazing videos.